I'm Chaz West, and this is Westbound. The thing that made me do this was later on, but that originally got me excited and inspired was hearing the records, maybe hearing the radio as a kid, and I was just like, I want to do that. And I tried playing guitar probably about 5, 6 years old, and I wasn't that good, obviously, but I just loved it. And I remember being on stage even at that point, because where I went to music school, they put together a little talent show for like the holidays, you know, Christmas. And I remember being on stage the first time. The guitar was bigger than I was. Guitar that my teacher had to bring it on stage to me, carry it for me. And I knew that this is like, I belong here. Between that and I also did a lot of theater too, you know, living back east. So, you know, I knew originally, I mean, right off the bat that there was something about being on stage and being, this is where I belong, you know. And the music inspired me. You know, eventually, later on in life, I had to make a choice. Was I going to go more for the theater acting or was I going to go more for the music? And I felt, I don't know, music was just more who I was as a performer, as an artist. Because, you know, I don't know if I was a good actor. I never did any drama, and even the theater I did, it was all musicals and things. So that's why I went more in that direction. But yeah, that's pretty much what started it off. I remember being a little kid in the back of a car, and my parents had the radio on, and I heard Aerosmith's Dream On. And I just was like, who is this? You know, and hearing Steven Tyler's voice, hit those scream notes, I was like, wow, you know. And my voice hadn't even changed yet. I was still a kid, but I was like, wow, yes, you know. And, you know, sometimes you'd be able to stay up late on a Friday night and watch Midnight Special or something, and, you know, I was like, wow, you know, I want to do that, you know. And eventually I saw my first concert, which was The Who at Madison Square Garden in New York City. Sold out, and my dad had some business connections and got me the tickets, and I went, and I was absolutely floored. And Roger Daltrey's, you know, swinging the mic and singing his ass off, and, you know, Pete Townsend, you know, doing windmills and jumping in the air, and it was just, I couldn't believe it. And I was just like, that's what I want to do, and I know I can do that, you know. And it's funny because years later, after I had some success, and I hung out with Roger a couple times, even did a couple of shows with him. And I told him this story, and he's like, oh, come on, no, it wasn't me. And I go, well, yeah, you were the first concert I ever saw. Yes, there were other singers eventually that I saw also in other bands that I went, okay, you know. And I kind of always try to take a little bit of each one and then put it into myself. You know, I kind of used a scenario like I put it in a blender, mix it all up, and then, you know, it becomes Chaz West, you know, because it's still me. But I told him that, and he was like, wow. But he was so cool. He was so like humble and, you know, almost self-deprecating. But yeah, that's what originally really started things off. Yeah, I love this band called Rival Sons. They've been around for a few years. Had a few records, but I think they're basically taking a lot of old school, Bad Company, a bit of Zeppelin, Montrose, I hear influences, and not using all the gimmicks and, you know, and gadgets and you know, sampling and all that stuff. It's real raw hard rock blues, which I love. It's, you know, that's my blood, you know. You know, and I love that band, and I think that, you know, I kind of like, I like what they're doing there, and I could go in that, I feel it, you know, and I just, maybe, I wouldn't use the word influence, but maybe slightly as far as my writing goes. There's another band called Dirty Honey. They're from LA area, as well as Rival Sons. And I think they're great too. They're more of a 80s Guns N' Roses, Aerosmith kind of feel, which I love both those bands, and, you know, I've been fortunate enough to play with some of those members. So yeah, I think, and it's more old school. It's 70s, 80s, you know. To me, it was real then. It wasn't fake, you know. So I love those bands. And there's other artists, you know, that give me hope for the future, especially, you know, kids, you know, and I'm listening to like, or starting to listen to like real rock. You know, I mean, my bassist and his wife's son's 21 years old, you know, I'm Uncle CHAS. And a couple of years ago, he was listening to his hip hop, you know, and I was like, yeah. And even now, he's even seeing through, you know, the bullocks as far as like, it's bullshit now. There's not even any creative, you know, thought put into it as far as the lyrical content or even the music. It's all fake. And I used to tell you, his favorite band, he was listening to AC/DC and Aerosmith. And I'm like, that gives me hope for the future of music, you know? Yeah, I was fortunate enough to play with Jason Bonham. He gave me my first break. You know, I beat out 700 and something singers, and next thing I know, 2 weeks later, my whole life changed. And I was on tour and living the dream. You know, I played in front of 100,000 people in South America. You know, it was the greatest high in the world. And after that, of course, that opened more doors with, after that came Foreigner for a brief period of time, Lynch Mob, Jakey Lee, Sweet, you know, the list goes on. Diamond Head. You know, all of a sudden, I got a name from, you know, when you're playing with the son of who's considered the greatest rock drummer of all time, you know, it really helped me out a lot. And it eventually, to the point where I was able to put together my own thing, which is Westbound, which is something I've wanted to do for a while, but I needed the right opportunity and vehicle. And now I have that, and I have the right band and the right guys that we all, you know, we're like a family, you know, a family or a gang. And, you know, we're on the same mindset. We're both all in the same style of music, and, you know, want to go in the same direction. And, yeah, I'm very, very fortunate there. Okay, well, Westbound is a band that I wanted to put together for quite a long time, you know, and I just needed the opportunity and the vehicle to do that, which I finally did get. And I found the right guys, and we were all basically in the same influences, like 70s, 80s, more 70s, Led Zeppelin, Aerosmith, you know, the blues, hard rock style. And of course, a little bit of the 80s Van Halen and things like that. In fact, Jimmy, my guitarist, I had it in my mind that I was like, I wanted a guy that was a combination of Jimmy Page, Joe Perry, and Eddie Van Halen. And when I saw him play, I was like, you know, the image and everything, I was just like, wow, thank you, universe, you know, because that was I had that in mind. I was like, I need a guy like that. And so, yeah, that Westbound is you know, is our baby. That I want to be able to do everything that I've wanted to do musically, I can do with these guys. I wanted a guy to play keys, and I met him, I'd already known him, done some like a couple of little gigs. Last time, I think it was New Year's Eve before the pandemic, and everything got shut down. And so then all we could do, we were doing these like, and I met T-Bone, and we hung out, and we got on really well, and he's a very talented guy and great fun guy to hang out with. And of course, everything got shut down. So all we were able to do was like these online shows, you know, that they would, streaming, right? Online streaming shows. And we did one, and after that, I had a little party at my friend's pub that was outdoors, so you could get away with that. Like a, you know, viewing party. And he came over to me and said, I love this band, I want to be in this band. And I said, really? Because he was kind of filling in, because the other guy I had was busy. We'd only done a few shows at that point. And he wasn't able to do this online, you know, streaming show. And so I called T-Bone, because I had played with him New Year's Eve the year before, right before the whole world changed as we know it. And he came through, and he, like I said, at the party, viewing party, he said, I want to be in this band. And I said, really? I said, you know, I don't know when we're going to be able to do shows again. Who knows how long this is going to last. At that point, I was thinking, oh, maybe 6 months. Here we are, there was 18 months later. But he goes, I don't care, I want to be the guy. I want to be in the band. I love the band, I love the songs, I love the guys, I love your voice, I love and then I was like, okay, I love that. I love that attitude, that he took the initiative to come to me and say, I want to be in the band, because I didn't know that. And I thought, he's a friend, he's filling in, he's got other things going on. So yeah, he was definitely, a great find. Jason, I knew from years prior. We had done another project together, Jason Cornwell, and we got on really well. The project didn't work out because we were kind of in the same headspace as opposed to the guys we were playing with. So, he said, it was kind of like, if you ever got something going, I would love to do something with you on your own. Sure enough, when the opportunity came up, and I had the vehicle, I was like, okay, you into doing this? And he was like, yes. And he's become, integral part of the band and has helped me a lot as far as the East Coast connections and promoters and things like that, Dave Chili Moreno, the drummer, has been my bro for 30 years. We were kids, came up together in local bands in Los Angeles, He's from there, I'm not. I was a kid, that came out to LA, didn't know a single soul, I worked as a doorman and at the Troubadour nightclub. But we came up together playing the local bands, and then, we just kind of got on really well. And we both saw that, we were both really good at what we did. And I knew that, and I was like his big brother. I even ended up living at his house for a bit, So when the opportunity, at first he was the first person I thought of as far as being my drummer. Or excuse me, the drummer, I should say. Because I always say I wanted a band that was, pros, but also bros, So to me that was really important. Because I've seen so many bands where it's just hired players, get this one and that one, and they don't even know, put together bands by labels. I've seen that happen. And the majority of the time, it doesn't work out, or a very short period of time. Because personalities and egos and there's clashes and, you can do it for a short period of time if the money's really great, or whatever, they're working. But all of a sudden, normally, no, it doesn't usually last. So, and I didn't want that. I've been through some situations like that before Westbound. So, live and learn. And I learned what to do, and then also, what not to do for later on. First single release will be out on June 27th. It's entitled Don't Stand in My Sunshine. It was written by Roy Z and I, a great musician, friend I've played with before. He was with Rob Halford. He's, still plays with Bruce Dickinson. We did a band called Tribe of Gypsies together, which also included Dave Chili Moreno. So we got the idea because we had seen this movie called Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Great movie, and it stars George Clooney. It takes place in the Depression era, and they put together this like bluegrass kind of band, and it basically saves their lives, gets them out of prison, because this was like when radio was first starting, so nobody knew who they would call themselves the Soggy Bottom Boys. So to make a long story short, we liked the song they did. It was great, and we both liked it. And also I thought, well, if we did something like that, and then added a little bit of like When the Levee Breaks by Led Zeppelin, because it was very similar, I think that could work. And that's how we came up, with the idea musically. Lyrically, it's the old blues adage, and, pain and suffering, and basically keeping toxic people and negativity away from you. You're not going to let them take you down, and even if, you've been stabbed in the heart and, whatever, you're not going to take me down, whether it be an individual or a group of people, So I wanted to get across that lyrical content so that it, exemplifies what we've all gone through in life. But at the end, we end up, on top. And so that's basically where the whole idea where the lyrical content and the idea came about. I think some of my friends and fans might be surprised at something a little different than they're used to hearing from me, which I like, because incorporates the blues, a little, dare I say, a little bit of even country with rock, which it turns out when the levee breaks, it turns out I didn't know this for years, but that was a cover song from like the 20s or 30s too, that they redid. So, it all kind of makes sense. And I think, and maybe my new friends and fans will hopefully love it too. And like I said, it incorporates all those different aspects of musical styles, all thrown into one.